Writing code of any kind can be a challenge when you are poorly equipped. Let's spend some time exploring free resources to help you interact with DNA Center APIs. Let's begin by exploring the Cisco DevNet documentation for the DNA Center APIs. I'm currently at the developer.cisco.com/docs URL, which is the main page for API documentation. Towards the bottom, we see DNA Center listed under the Network Controller APIs heading, along with several other Cisco products. Let's click Cisco DNA Center REST API to continue. This takes us to the API docs for DNA Center, which is separated by version. Let's expand the version drop-down menu. The DevNet Sandbox is currently on version 1.3.1.4, so let's choose the proper version. We can expand any of these categories to see the API requests in each one. Let's check out authentication as an example. This category has a single request, which is a post request to the token resource. We can click on the request itself to get additional details. The text description indicates that we'll need to use the XAuth token header for future API requests after obtaining a token, which is good to know. Regarding this specific request, we must specify a content type and authorization. The authorization header requires a username and password for HTTP basic auth. Scrolling down, we can see the possible responses. 200 OK responses include a dictionary with a token key, which we'll need to store. 401 unauthorized responses indicate that invalid credentials were supplied. We won't scrub this documentation because I think you get the point. Let's move on to the DevNet sandboxes. Sandboxes are great for tinkering with new technology or actively developing scripts you intend to use in production. For all of my DevNet-oriented courses, I rely heavily on sandboxes. Let's search for DNA Center to see what's available. Today, there are two flavors of DNA Center sandboxes. The always-on sandbox is read-only and doesn't require a reservation. You can collect lists of devices, site layouts, and perform other simple tasks. The Hardware Lab sandboxes have read-write permissions but require a reservation. I personally have it scheduled for later this week. Let's click on the Reservable Sandbox to continue. From this page, we can reserve the sandbox if we want or keep exploring. I suggest you read the overview text on your own time to better understand how the sandbox works and how to access it. Let's move on to Postman next. I created a free Postman collection for Cisco DNA Center, which is hosted on my personal website. You can download the zip file and import the Postman collection, as well as some pre-made DevNet environments. Once imported, you'll see something like this. The requests contained in this collection directly correlate with common Cisco Enterprise automation topics, so let's expand it. To keep things clean, I've separated requests into different folders. Let's check out the authentication and general requests. Let's pick the Get Token Modern request, which should look familiar from our documentation exploration earlier in the clip. The request comes pre-populated with a URL referencing an environment variable of the DNA Center IP address within the sandbox. I've populated the sandbox login credentials within the Postman environment to make things easier. These are also environment variables you can edit if necessary. I've also included several example responses, which you can use to see what right and wrong requests look like. This should be helpful when writing Python code to process response data. Last, you can select between the always-on or reservable environments, which simplifies connecting to DNA Center. Again, we won't explore this whole collection. I just want to make sure you knew about it, and I recommend you use it to reinforce learning as we advance through this course.